They were targeted. It was an execution.
A brutal killing.
There was a blood trail all the way out from his room to the front door.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
We started to focus in now on that 24 hours of who they may have been in contact with.
He would make statements like he wanted to kill them, that they deserved to die.
She had made threats that she was going to come by and shoot up his law firm.
He has the ability to gain the entire, very successful business. We're talking millions and millions of dollars.
The truth will be revealed.
I said, two things are going to happen today. I'm going to go home tonight, and you're going to go to jail for murder.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Coral Gables, a haven of wealth and luxury nestled a few miles south of Miami.
It's beautiful. I mean, Coral Gables is considered, I think they call it like the little Venice of South Florida because of its waterways.
Safe and usually quiet.
In the city of Coral Gables, murders are very few and far between.
But in August 2004, that peace is violently shattered.
Coral Gables 911.
They shot me.
They shot you?
Yes.
With what?
I don't know.
When uniformed officers from the Coral Gables Police Department arrived on the scene, they were met at the door by John Sutton.
He's bleeding from the head. They see wounds to his hands and possibly the shoulder. They ask him what's going on. He says, I'm not sure, I've been shot. And they ask him if there's anyone else inside the house. And he says, yes, his wife.
Inside, police discover a bloodbath.
We found a major blood scene in the southeast bedroom, which was where John was. There was a blood trail all the way out from his room to the front door. We located Susan Sutton in the southwest bedroom in bed where she was shot and she was obviously deceased.
John had been shot multiple times in the face. He was in pretty bad shape. He had to be transported immediately to the hospital.
As John is raced to the ER, Miami-Dade homicide detectives Rosanna Cordero-Stutz, Larry Bellew, and Art Nanny are tasked with finding Susan Sutton's killer. They must now uncover every significant detail from the last 24 hours of her life.
Establishing a timeline is absolutely critical because you have to have some sort of foundation upon which to build a case. You have to know where someone was before they were murdered, what they were doing, who they were with, because all those things can lead to a potential suspect.
Their top priority is to speak with the sole survivor of the attack, John Sutton. But he's in critical condition, undergoing 14-hour emergency surgery.
We don't know John's gonna make it. In fact, our suspicion is John is not gonna make this. We're looking at a double homicide.
I was doing bad. No doubt from the loss of an excessive amount of blood. I was given last rites the next day, Monday morning, and also the next day, Tuesday morning. Somehow on Wednesday, I started to come around and make some improvement.
John wakes up from a medically induced coma to find his room filled with detectives looking for answers.
John tries really hard to try to piece together what occurred that evening, but the truth is that he has a very hard time. He's got some big holes in his memory from the trauma.
And it's not just the result of shock.
The gunshot wound that entered John Sutton's head detached his retinas.
I had a multiplicity of injuries. When the pain medication wore out, everything hurt, and I was blind. I don't remember being shot in the head at all.
The details about that night come slowly and in fragments.
We slept in separate rooms as a result of my snoring. At about 10 o'clock, maybe a little bit before 10, Susan went into the bedroom. I went to the bathroom. While I was going to the bathroom, I heard a big bang. I had no idea what it was, but if it had been something serious, I expected that Susan would have called out or said, "Help me," or something happened. I went to the bed. I sat on the bed. In comes a man with a black hat, black shirt, black pants, and the firing started. It felt as though I had taken a dive and landed right on my face. And I was confused, didn't know what was going on.
Despite his best efforts, John gives police almost nothing to go on.
It was safe to say that he did not know the person who shot him. He really had no description of the person at all.
And having drifted in and out of consciousness for days, it's only now that detectives are able to tell John the fate of his wife.
The reaction was, I basically lost all emotional ability to recognize what had happened, what was happening, and what would happen. I just was out of it. I still feel guilty that I didn't go to the funeral.
John's loss is compounded by the mystery of who killed his wife and why.
From an investigative point of view, you have to consider who was their intended target. Was it that they were after John and Susan was just collateral damage? Was it someone who was angry with Susan and John happened to be home at the time?
A clue from the crime scene offers a potential motive.
The responding officer advised that there was a point of entry of a sliding glass door opposite of where the victims were shot.
We considered the possibility that what occurred was actually a robbery, home invasion gone wrong.
But other details don't support this idea.
Susan had jewelry everywhere, expensive jewelry. There was cash and credit cards in plain sight, where someone who had the motive of money would have easily been able to grab it and take it with them when they fled, but that didn't happen. Whoever came in went across the entire house, literally from one end of the residence to the exact opposite end, as far as you could go, shot both people, and then turned around and fled.
For the detectives, there's only one other option left.
There was a lot of bullet trauma to Susan Sutton, which meant that a lot of anger was directed towards her.
It was an execution. They were targeted. They were going to kill John and Susan Sutton.
Their only hope of finding Susan's killer now rests with the timeline.
We started to focus in on that 24 hours of who they may have been in contact with.
They learn of a celebration dinner John says had taken place just hours beforehand.
Susan cooked for her own birthday party, and some southwestern salad, as I recall.
The people that were there was her husband, John Sutton, her son, Christopher Sutton, Christopher Sutton's girlfriend, Juliet Driscoll, and Teddy Montato.
Teddy Montato was John Sutton's partner in the law firm. He was also a good close friend of the family. We also learned that Juliet Driscoll was a secretary that worked for John.
John and Teddy specialized in civil litigation, and some recent success was also being toasted that night.
They had won a big case, and they were celebrating having gotten that money.
Teddy tells police that having arrived at the house at 7 o'clock, he then left at around 9:30. This makes him the last person to see the Suttons before the attack. Strangely, he's also the first person to show up at the crime scene.
I was the one that told him officially that Susan had died, that she had been declared dead on the scene. And he became very emotional about that. He was very visibly shaken by that news. That seemed a bit above and beyond what most normal people would have reacted. He wasn't blood relative. He was a friend of the family, lived in another house.
As Detective Cordero Stutz probes further, her curiosity turns into suspicion.
Teddy tells me that he is a competitive shooter and that he had been earlier that Sunday shooting, and therefore he would have gunshot residue on his hands were we to test him. When we're in the midst of a homicide investigation, somebody, clearly identifying themselves as, I'm gonna have gunshot residue, is something that a bit of a red flag.
The unsolicited information puts the spotlight firmly on John Sutton's business partner.
It's visible that he is in conflict. I felt that there was something he wanted to tell me, but he just didn't know how or was afraid to.
But is he a killer? There's still a big question mark.
Teddy Montoto's admission of handling a gun only hours before the shooting of John and Susan Sutton has detectives questioning whether he was responsible for the attack.
There are many reasons why Teddy could have been a very plausible suspect in this shooting. He has the ability to gain the entire, very successful business from the death of his partner.
In some murder cases, money becomes the motive for the murder. How it plays out in the sense of who promised money, who paid money, all of that is semantics to me. Money is a great motivator. Money makes people kill.
Detective Cordero Stutz presses Teddy further, but his answers only deepen the mystery.
He told me that he had been on the phone with Susan, and he heard what he described as a loud bang and maybe even a gunshot, and that then the phone went dead. But then he kept calling back and wasn't able to get a hold of anyone. And eventually he decided that the best course was to actually drive back to the house to make sure they were okay. And when he gets there, the police are on the scene and have it taped off, and he's unable to actually go up to the house.
Detectives hone in on why Teddy is on the phone with the wife of his business partner so late at night.
It just didn't add up. He just left a party, and if they were going to have conversations pertaining to business and all stuff, you'd think it would have happened during that time frame. We've got to find out now why he was this important to Susan Sutton to be having a conversation at that time of the night.
Teddy was strongly affected by what had happened to Susan. He's extremely nervous, and I had a very strong feeling that he wasn't being forthcoming. Investigations are a percentage of fact-finding, but it's also a percentage of your own personal experience and what other people call their gut feeling. All of these bits and pieces that kind of rub you the wrong way, they're not enough, obviously, in regards to making an arrest or anything like that, but it's definitely something that makes you dig deeper. So I discussed it with the lead investigator, and we talked about the possibilities of asking him to submit to a lie detector test.
Polygraph examinations are extremely helpful. In certain circumstances, it is to send messages to the person, number one, that you're having interviewed. You don't believe them. We don't know what the person is lying about, but we know they're lying.
Teddy agrees to the test and then fails.
Specifically, he fails in regards to the relationship between himself and Susan.
Despite this, Teddy continues to protest his innocence, so Cordero Stutz turns her focus to the physical evidence.
When Teddy Montoto responds to the police station to take his polygraph, he admits to us that he's now brought his weapon with him. It was a 9mm, which was consistent with the casings on the scene. And we impounded it and tested it to see if, in fact, this was the murder weapon.
While the detectives await the ballistics result, they begin to question others they can place on the victim's 24-hour timeline.
In any investigation, you want to interview anybody who has knowledge about what happened just prior to the incident, if you can. So just reconstructing what happened that night altogether was very important.
Chris Sutton and his girlfriend Juliet Driscoll were also at the house that night.
I learned that they had been at the house for dinner around 7 p.m. and that Christopher and Juliet had left around 9 p.m. to go see a movie.
As the team looked to confirm the young couple's alibi, they also delved deeper into the Sutton family history.
We had learned that Christopher was born to a 15-year-old mother and was adopted at a young age.
Well, there were infertility issues, and therefore we went the adoption route. Well, she was thrilled. She couldn't have been more happy, as he was an infant and a toddler.
But Chris's behavior then takes a troubling turn.
As he matured into a teenager, became difficult to get along with. He was sort of bucking his system, having more and more problems getting along with his parents.
He was always getting into trouble. When he was 17 years old, Susan approached John and said, "Look, we need to do something with Chris."
They decided to send him to a strict behavioral reform school in Samoa.
We were at our wits' end, and we had lengthy conversations, and this seemed like this was a good way to go.
The idea was to help Chris find his way, but even here, he remained defiant.
Well, there was rumors of some very hard discipline.
One of the things that they said was occurring at the school is that there was like an isolation room where if you broke the rules, you were locked away in this isolation room for hours at a time.
And he thought he was going to get out when he turned 18 years old. But he didn't realize that John Sutton went to a court and had an order signed to keep him until he completed the school, which infuriated Christopher Sutton.
The disturbing details of his past are enough to make Chris a potential suspect.
Christopher has a history. He's been in trouble before. He's given his parents a hard time. But the night of the incident, he's not there.
According to Chris, they arrived at the theater at 9:30 p.m. They then sat down to watch the film at 10 o'clock, and it ended a few hours later.
Juliet confirms that she and Christopher had gone in the movies and that they had then afterwards gone home and gone to bed. Once we found out what movie theater they'd gone to in the time, we were able to get the CCTV footage of the two of them leaving the movies, which was sometime around midnight.
The couple's alibi is rock solid. So the detectives delve further into the Suttons' final day. This leads them to John's thriving legal business.
I got up early and went to the office at about 9:30, checked my mail, reviewed some cases.
Some of the closest friends that we spoke to said that John was the type of lawyer that would take on any case. He wouldn't shy away from a case where other lawyers would.
When I say that he won a case and it was a big payout, we're talking millions and millions of dollars.
In the time period, June, July, and August, we had resolved several substantial personal injury cases. The total gross of all of these settlements was nearly $4 million. And in fact, Thursday, which would have been August 19, before the incident, one of those checks came in for $1,350,000, and Susan asked Christopher to take it to the bank.
It was a business that could have easily created enemies. And in fact, it did.
One of the cases John settled was a $100,000 case, I believe, against a woman. She had made threats against John that she was going to come by and shoot up his law firm.
She had a tremendous grudge. I was the worst thing that there could have been. She filed complaints with the Florida bar against me. She wanted me dead. She hated me.
Police are now considering the possibility that a vengeful killer stalked and shot John Sutton and his wife over a lawsuit.
If someone is attacked and the first thing you do is run their name, and there's already been someone documented that they have been threatening to cause them harm, of course you're going to take that seriously.
As they probe deeper into the death threat, the detectives uncover a disturbing piece of information.
One of the things that we learned is that a neighbor said that they heard a boat crank up sometime around 10:30 and take off behind John Sutton's house at a high rate of speed.
The Sutton home backed up to a very large canal, and that particular witness said that around that time she had observed this boat speeding away.
And we learned later that she owned that type of boat.
So one of the things we had to do was to verify where the boat was at the time of the murder. One of the detectives was tasked with finding that information out, and they were able to obtain video footage of her boat docked at the time of the murder in her slip.
It just did not fit that this boat may have been used to gain access to the Sutton property.
But as an investigative lead, we have to do the interview and make sure, or either rule her out or keep her in the investigation. We spoke to her. We didn't have any belief that she did that.
With the woman cleared, detectives turn back to Teddy Montoto. The ballistics report on his gun has finally landed on Cordero Stutz's desk.
When the results came in, it turned out that it was not the murder weapon.
But Teddy's not off the hook yet.
We are able to rule out that that's the weapon that was used in the murder, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been another 9mm.
So she presses him on what he's hiding.
Once we confronted Teddy with the fact that he had failed the polygraph, he quickly admitted to us that the reason why he failed it was because he and Susan were involved in a romantic relationship and had been for several years.
The confession offers up a whole new motive for the attack.
After he admits that he's involved in a relationship, you have someone who has the oldest of all reasons for murder, which is a love triangle.
A love triangle in murders is often a very overwhelming consideration because someone may feel, for example, that they've been wronged by somebody, that they were promised something. I'll leave my wife, I'll leave my husband for you. And this person's been kept on the hook for, in some cases, years. Police have to look at that because someone being jilted can be a very strong factor for murder.
Teddy says that the reason why he lied originally was because he wanted to protect Susan's honor. At this point, she is now dead. Nothing's gonna change that. And if he could have kept from her family, her children, and her husband that she was having an extramarital affair, then that was something he was gonna try to do. Teddy claimed that he was at home at the time of the shooting, that he was on the telephone with Susan. Using the phone records, we were able at that time to verify that he was in fact speaking to her from his residence, which was a couple of miles away from the scene of the crime. Teddy's ultimately ruled out as a suspect.
But the admission devastates his friend and colleague.
I felt that I had been betrayed. I felt that I had been tricked. I felt that I had been deceived left and right. And it was just one more problem on top of the stack of problems.
The suspect list is now down to 0, frustrating John beyond measure.
I was quite a difficult victim because I kept asking, where are the police reports? I want the police reports. What's going on? Who's doing what? What's the investigation? And they were not forthcoming.
So it has to be a totality when it comes to a homicide investigation. It's not just finding the person who committed the crime. It's saying, this person may have done it for A, B, C, and D reasons, but they didn't. It is a lot of work, but you absolutely have to be thorough.
Weeks into the investigation, that diligence pays off when the detectives notice something unusual.
I was assigned a task of collecting the phone numbers from the Suttons, John and Susan, Chris Sutton, Julia Driscoll, Teddy Montano.
What stands out are the records belonging to Christopher Sutton.
It turned out there had been a pattern of phone calls for several weeks, up to leading to the night of the shooting.
162 times from July 19th through August 23rd.
The last of those calls comes close to midnight on the night of the murder, and it's a moment captured on camera.
He probably wasn't more than 50 to 100 feet outside the doors when he immediately gets on the phone.
What caught my attention when I observed the video is the fact that Chris, upon leaving the movie theater, is quickly reaching for his cell phone and dialing it and getting on the phone. And Juliet is actually a couple of feet away from him and kind of, lagging behind him. You would kind of think that after a movie like that with your fiance, you might be holding her hand and asking her what she thought of the movie, as opposed to getting on the phone and calling someone else.
We learned who he spoke to at that particular time was a guy by the name of Garrett Kopp.
He was young, somewhere between 19 and 20. We learned that he had a girlfriend who he had a child with. He had a past for breaking and entering, a misdemeanor past for dealing in drugs. He appeared to be going nowhere in life.
Kopp seems like a petty criminal, until they discover a detail about his most recent run-in with police.
We learned that he had been arrested by Homestead Police Department the day after the murder.
Homestead is probably 18 to 20 miles south of the city of Coral Gables.
And at that point, Art and I were, wow.
As an investigator, I don't believe in coincidences. Certainly in homicide investigations, there's no such thing as coincidence. There's a reason why things happen.
So I called down to the Homestead Police Department. I asked him, I said, please tell me it was some type of assault. He says it was. I said, please tell me a gun was involved. He says, well, there was a gun involved. I said, please tell me it's a Glock. He says, it was a Glock, 9mm. I said, now please tell me you have that weapon. He goes, I do.
Detective Larry Bellieu's gut tells him he may have located the murder weapon that killed Susan Sutton.
At that point, we retrieved that weapon from Homestead, and that weapon was submitted to our firearms examiner, who matched that weapon with the projectile evidence removed from Susan and from the crime scene, and learned that it was the gun used to kill Susan Sutton and shoot John Sutton.
Garrett Kopp now becomes bigger than life in our investigation, and now we've got to start figuring out what's going on with Garrett Kopp.
Despite this game-changing discovery, Bellieu is in no hurry to drag Kopp in for questioning.
We do know that we have the weapon. We have Garrett Kopp, who supposedly had the weapon, but we still wanted to build the case. If we brought Garrett Kopp in, he says, look, I got that weapon from a friend of mine. That's all he has to say, basically. We still don't know that he did it. So during this time, we're still building our investigation by talking with other people.
And the first person on their list is Christopher Sutton.
I was instructed to do just a routine interview. While talking to Chris about Garrett Kopp, he only identified him as a business associate. When asked, what do you mean by business associate, he said he had Garrett Kopp to his parents' house to do some oddball jobs. He didn't elaborate on what those oddball jobs were, except for one particular item, which was after the murder of the mother and the shooting of the father, that he had Garrett Kopp over to remove the carpet from the master bedroom where John Sutton was shot.
But when Kopp's name is floated to others, a very different picture emerges.
My assignment at that time was John. I'm able to interview John after he returns home from the hospital while he's recuperating. John said that Garrett and Christopher were very good friends, that they spent a lot of time together, they hung out together.
Garrett had been in the house before, yes. Probably a few times. I was aware that Garrett had dropped out of school. I was aware that Christopher hung out with him. I believed that Garrett wasn't working and was somewhat of a deadbeat, and this wasn't something that was a good relationship that Christopher was having. I was suspicious of Christopher doing drugs. However, I had nothing to prove it.
As police dig deeper, John's suspicions are confirmed.
We had learned that the two of them were talking about dealing in drugs, and in fact, Chris would give Garrett Kopp drugs to sell so he'd have some money in his pocket.
This introduces a whole new theory about the crime.
Garrett had been to the house. He had worked some odd jobs, so he knew the layout of the house. So as an investigator, ultimately, you have to consider what gain or benefit Garrett had. If it was Garrett who decided that, you know what, I know they've got stuff there to get money, or I know there's drugs there, I'm gonna go get the drugs. We have to consider the possibility that maybe Garrett Kopp did this all on his own.
He had a warrant for his arrest issued by the court for something else. And when he was arrested, I said, well, bring him to my office. And that's when we started interviewing him about the murder.
For the record, state your name. It's Garrett Kopp.
Well, during this whole interview, I'm gaining information that I'm going to be able to attack Garrett on.
Interviewing is an art, it's not a science. Again, it's experience. But when you interview someone, you're looking for a number of tells, if you think of poker for a minute, tells in a poker game. A really good interview can pick it off while he's conducting the interview.
Garrett tells me that the gun that they retrieved that night was not his weapon, that it was somebody else's, which I kind of thought he was going to tell me anyway.
Sometimes when people are starting to cover up, they all start telling little white lies, which, you know, in the end, the more little white lies you tell, eventually you're going to get tripped up.
Well, one of the things I asked Garrett was how close he was with Christopher.
How long have you known Chris Sutton?
About 6, 7 years.
How did you meet Christopher Sutton?
I lived in his neighborhood,
Where was that at?
Sunset Club,
And where's that located?
Sunset and 72nd Avenue.
And I said, do you speak with him on a daily basis? He says, no, not at all. Which we knew to be a lie because we had the phone records. He said he was with his girlfriend that particular night. His girlfriend was out waiting in the lobby. And I said, well, I'm going to be speaking with her right after I get done with you. He knew that he had been put in a corner, and now he's been caught in several lies. And at that point, finally, 3 or 4 or 5 hours later, he gave it up and said, look, he did do this. And I said, well, why? Why did you do this? Was John Sutton or Susan Sutton ever angry at you? Did they ever mistreat you? Did they ever do anything to hurt you? And he said, no. And that's when he revealed it. He said, Chris wanted me to do it, and he told me that if he wasn't gonna do it, Christopher was gonna kill him and his baby boy.
After a grueling interview, Garrett Kopp finally admits to pulling the trigger on both John and Susan Sutton.
Why did you shoot Christopher's parents?
Because my life was in Chris's hands. Told me he'd kill my son if I did not. And me.
But Kopp's revelation implicating the couple's son, Christopher, as the man behind the attack adds a completely different dimension to the case.
So I know that Garrett Kopp is going to go to jail for first-degree murder. At that point, we have to start trying to build the case against Christopher.
Without alerting Chris, they must find another way of confirming Kopp's story.
And it had to be Juliet Driscoll, his girlfriend. They were close. They'd been dating for several years. She has to know about this. So we brought her in, and I interviewed her all day. We had to be there 10, 11 hours. And she kept denying. I don't know anything about the murder. Christopher never speaks to me about anything. So I had to find some kind of way to get to her. And I said, you know what? She was close to Susan. And I brought that fact up. I said, Susan was good to you. She was like a mother to you. I can't believe you're just allowing this to happen. That family, the whole family was good to you. They gave you a job. And I saw a tear come out of her eye. And I knew that I had her. And at that point, she began to tell me what she knew about Christopher. Chris hated his parents for sending him to the behavioral school and really wanted to do harm to them.
Juliet admits that when he would get very angry, he would make statements like that he wanted to kill them, that they deserved to die.
But we still didn't know why, because this was several years prior. What triggered this now? But then we realized Teddy and John had just settled those multi-million-dollar lawsuits, and Christopher knew about it, and Christopher actually put the money in the bank. He wanted the money. It came down to the hatred, and he just wanted their money. So now I had enough to get an arrest warrant for Christopher Sutton.
After tracking Chris down, he is brought in to face Detective Bellew.
I introduced myself to him. I said, two things are gonna happen today. I'm gonna go home tonight, and you're gonna go to jail for murder. There's not anything stopping that. I said, before you tell me anything, though, understand this. I said, I've done my homework. I said, I got a sworn statement from Juliet Driscoll, and he said he wanted to see it. Well, he read certain parts of the statement and put his head down on the table and says, and started crying.
Christopher Sutton is charged with the first-degree murder of his mother and the attempted murder of his father.
Do I feel betrayed, tricked? Absolutely. Does my head hurt now because I got bullets in it? Absolutely. It was cold-blooded murder. There are some things that are temporary and come and go. This is permanent. This doesn't go away.
The 24-hour timeline developed by the detectives reveals exactly how Chris masterminded the plot to kill his own parents.
The story is that Christopher gets a gun, gives it to Garrett, tells him how to get into the house, told him where his parents would be, the fact that his parents would be in 2 separate bedrooms, and exactly where to go to the back of the house and where to do the shooting. The night of the shooting, the family gets together for a celebratory dinner around 7 p.m. at the house. Chris and Juliet are there. Susan and John are there. Teddy Montoto is there as well. They have a nice dinner. They cut a cake for her birthday. Around 9 p.m., Juliet and Christopher leave for this movie. Teddy Montoto leaves the house around 9:30 p.m. And around 10 p.m., both John and Susan retire to their respective bedrooms for the evening. Now, we know that Teddy gets on the telephone with Susan shortly thereafter. They're actually on the phone. He's on his landline, and she's on his cell phone. During that time, we have Garrett Kopp enter the house in the rear sliding glass door, walks from one end of the house all the way around to the other end, and confronts each of them in the bedroom, and he shoots them. He shoots Susan multiple times as she pulls a blanket over her. He shoots John multiple times, striking him up to twice in the face. He leaves John for dead, and he has in fact killed Susan right there on the scene. Shortly thereafter, Christopher and Garrett are on the telephone with each other for Garrett to report to Chris that he has in fact carried out the murder. The timeline it's very important. I think that any reasonable person can look at that timeline and understand how it went from point A to point Z.
We had done our homework. We had turned over every stone and was able to present all these facts beyond a reasonable doubt to this jury on why Chris Sutton was involved in his parents' murder.
In exchange for his testimony, Garrett Kopp receives a sentence of 30 years. Christopher Sutton never admits to his involvement. He is sentenced to life.
There's no doubt in my mind that Christopher orchestrated this for his own means. He saw that he had a great chance for a free ride and to do whatever he wanted whenever he wanted to do it. I have not spoken to him since the trial. He needs to be secured and not ever considered for parole. At this point, I have to look forward, not backward. And therefore, I compartmentalize it. I put it in the background. I know it's there. I bring it up too often. Of course, you always question, what else could I have done? What else could I have done? There's nothing else I could have done.
Christopher Sutton had been looking for someone to kill his parents for years, and he found that someone in Garrett Kopp.